Hello, this is Dr. Anthony Festmeyer. In this video, we're going to look at 9 common open position chords on the guitar. E, E minor, A minor, D, D minor, G, G7, and C. Let's get started. For the E chord, also known as E major, we're going to go ahead and use fingers 1, 2, and 3. Finger 1 will go on the 2nd fret of the G string. Finger 2 will skip down to the A string and play on the 2nd fret. And finger 3 will go on the D string, also in the 2nd fret. For this chord, we're going to go ahead and strum all 6 strings on the guitar. One thing that we should take note of is that often when we're playing chords on the guitar, we will end up with some of these muted sounds, where some of the notes of the chord are sounding nice and clear and other notes aren't. One way to go ahead and check to see if your notes are clear is to go ahead and play one string at a time. And if any of those notes happen to be muted, we want to adjust our fingers to fix that. There are 2 reasons why the notes might be muted. Number 1, you're not quite putting enough pressure with your fingers to get the note to sound. Now, by the way, you don't want to press too hard to create a lot of tension in your hand, but you do want to push hard enough, obviously, to get the note to sound. So that might be one reason. The other common reason is that a finger that is fretting a note, that is playing one of the notes of the chord, is leaned over and is touching the next string. All of these things will create muted sounds. And again, we don't want that to happen. So what I'll do is I'll finger my E chord and I'll go through one string at a time. If I hear a muted sound, I'll try to evaluate, is it because I'm not pushing hard enough, or am I touching the next string with a finger? In that case, I was touching the B string with the back of my first finger that's really fingering the note on the G string. So the best thing to do is to work on getting more on the tips of my fingers so that I could just focus in on the strings that I'm fingering and not touching the other strings. By the way, a good hand position on the guitar typically is this kind of C shape where I'm on the tips of my fingers and my thumb is, somewhat across from my fingertips. Okay, the next chord that we're going to take a look at is the E minor chord. The E minor chord and the E major chord are very much related. So if I go back and play the E major chord again, all I need to do is pick up my first finger, and now I have the E minor chord. For this chord, I typically use fingers 2 and 3. Finger 2 is on the A string 2nd fret, that's a B note. Finger 3 is on the D string 2nd fret, that's an E note. But depending on the context of the chords, the other chords that are around it in a particular song, I might choose to use a different combination of fingers. It's not uncommon to use fingers 1 and 2, like this, or even fingers 3 and 4, the ring finger and the pinky. Again, check each string one at a time to make sure that those notes are all ringing clearly. And if any of those notes are muted, then work on figuring out why. In that case, I wasn't quite pushing hard enough. So I adjusted my finger. Okay, the next set of chords will be the A major chord and the A minor chord. For the A major chord, it's common to use fingers 1, 2, and 3. They are all within the 2nd fret. So finger 1 is going to go on the 2nd fret of the D string. Finger 2 is going to go on the 2nd fret of the G string, just right on the next string. And finger 3 is going to go in the 2nd fret of the B string. Now you might feel like your fingers are pretty squished together depending on your hand and depending on the type of guitar that you're playing. And if that's the case, you might go ahead and use fingers 2, 3, and 4 instead. So in this case, finger 2 would be in the 2nd fret of the D string, finger 3 in the 2nd fret of the G, and finger 4, your pinky, in the 2nd fret of the B string. For this chord, we only strum 5 strings, so I'm leaving out the low E string when I play that chord. The next one is the A minor chord. If I go back to this fingering of the A major chord where I don't use finger 1, I just use fingers 2, 3, and 4, I could pick up my pinky and put my first finger down on the B string in the first fret. This chord looks pretty much like the E major chord, it's just moved up. By the way, when I say moved up, I mean moved into higher notes, but it's moving toward the floor. So sometimes that confuses people a little bit. But again, it looks just like the E major chord, it's just on a different set of strings. To review that really quickly, finger 1 will be in the first fret of the B string, that's the C note. Finger 2 will skip a string down to D and go in the second fret. And finger 3 will stay in the second fret but hit the G string. And then I'm going to go ahead and just strum 5 strings. Again, check every single note one at a time to make sure that they're clear and adjust your hand accordingly if you need to. The next set of chords will be the D major and the D minor chord. For the D major chord, again, I'm going to use fingers 1, 2, and 3. Finger 1 will be in the second fret on the G string. That's an A note. Finger 2 will be in the second fret of the high E string. So in this case, I'm skipping a string. That's an F sharp note. And then my third finger will go in the third fret of the B string. That is a D note. For this chord, I'm only going to strum 4 strings. So we need to be a little bit careful with this chord when we're putting it in the context of a song. Again, I can check one note at a time to make sure that they're ringing clearly. For the D minor chord, it's very much related to the D major chord. All I really need to do is move this note, the F sharp that is on the E string, back 1 fret to an F. But in order to do that, I have to reposition my fingers a bit. So let's go ahead and start with that first finger on the F note, on the first fret of the E string. I'm going to put my third finger on the third fret of the B string, that's a D note, and my second finger on the second fret of the A string. Again, for this chord, I only play 4 strings. So I'm going to start with the open D and play those 4 strings. Okay, the next chord is a G major chord. For this chord, I'll go ahead and start with my third finger. I will typically use fingers 1, 2, and 3, although I'll show you a couple of different fingerings. I'm going to put my third finger on the third fret of the high E string. Then I'm going to reach way down to the A string with my first finger and hit the second fret. This is string number 5, the A string. Then I'm going to use my second finger on a G note, which is the third fret of the low E string, here. And then for this chord, I strum all 6 strings. It's also not uncommon to put your pinky up here on top. So basically replace your third finger with your pinky. You get a little bit more of a stretch that way. And so you might find that that's a little bit more comfortable. Okay, the next chord is the G7 chord. The G7 chord only has 1 note that's different from the G chord, but we have to, again, reposition our fingers to make that happen. The note that's different is that this G up here on the high E string becomes an F, moves back to the first fret. So I'm going to start with my first finger on that F, reach with my second finger down again to the A string, second fret, the B note, and then use my third finger to hit the G note. That's the third fret of the low E string. Then I play all 6 strings again. The final open chord that we're going to take a look at is the C major chord. For this one, we're going to use, again, fingers 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to put my first finger on a C note. That is the first fret of the B string. Going to put my second finger down on the second fret of the D string, and then my third finger on the third fret of the A string. For this one, I'm only strumming 5 strings, so I'm leaving out that thick string, the low E.